Hmm. Exactly. Hmm. But it's live. Are you sure it's live? Can you hear me? Dude, can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk Social, and a talk show hosted by Crescent Literary Society. Here, we talk about social issues and other stuff related to the society. Here, in today's session, we'll be talking about a very important topic that is toxic masculinity. Now, obviously, the word toxic masculinity has been talked about a lot in recent times, and today's a discussion which will hopefully enlighten about all the thing that is entailed in this current topic, which is toxic masculinity. Now, obviously, we have with us Miss Rishika, and I'll be your co-host Alhabra.
Thank you, Talha. As you had mentioned, today's topic is going to be all about toxic masculinity and all the social stigmas that come along with it. So let's jump into the discussion. So do tell me, Talha, how do you define masculinity?
Okay, so masculinity in itself, like if you look at it from a dictionary perspective, you would say that it is defined as masculinity being a set of attributes, behaviors, and roles associated with boys and men. Now, something to notice is that this is distinct from the definition of biological male sex, as both males and female can actually exhibit masculine traits. Now, now this masculinity in itself has been very stigmatized in today's society, and we shall be hoping to talk about it, to elaborate it, and explain what exactly is masculinity further along in the discussion.
So do you think the attributes of being a masculine person has changed through the years that have come now?
Yes, of course. If you look out throughout history, the very definition of the word manliness has changed throughout the years. And we shall be talking about it in detail throughout the course of this discussion. Now, obviously, jumping straight into the topic, we will first define, now that we have defined what exactly masculinity is, I would like to know from you, Ms. Rishika, what exactly do you think toxic masculinity is?
Okay, so according to definition, toxic masculinity is a social science term that describes narrow repressive types of ideas about the male gender. It also defines masculinity as an exaggerated trait like being violent, unemotional, sexually aggressive, and so on. It also suggests that men who act too emotional are not men enough, or if they are not showing violence, they just get their man card taken away. So certain beliefs of toxic masculinity is that the interaction between men and women always has to be competitive and not cooperative. Men can truly never understand women, and that a man and woman can never be just friends. And certain being too emotional is also not considered manly enough, and there and if these men are subjected to abuse, they are not supposed to talk about it, and if they do talk about it, it's considered to be a very shameful act. So
Okay, yeah.
as
Yes.
we have as I have defined this toxic masculinity, have you as an individual ever faced situations that have made you feel uncomfortable and maybe you think that is toxic?
Well, I think the thing is that all males, regardless of their age or background or ethnicity, in some way or the other, have either been victimized or heard themselves being the perpetrator of this said topic, which is toxic masculinity. Largely so in Indian societies, we can now see that it has actually become the norm that true men are only those that exhibit the stigmatized view of masculinity. Now, obviously, you can look at it when phrases like men don't cry or men are strong are often tossed around, and we can hear it fairly regularly. And what we can conclusively derive from this is that stuff like this, phrases like this, and stigmatized views like this are often destructive to the mental health of. For example, if a boy ever in his entire childhood ever cries in front of his peers, he is more often than not ridiculed for not being man enough. This is something that has been normalized in modern society, and its effects can be seen in various different spectrums. And obviously, we can say that every man in his entire lifetime, from obviously from being a child to to present day, has obviously been either victimized or themselves been a cause for toxic masculinity. And I think it is of utmost and vital importance that we, actually talk about this, we open up about this, and we actually expel the myths and stigma that define what a true man is in today's society. So now, obviously, if you're taking this discussion of a little bit further, now that we've actually defined what toxic masculinity is, wherein toxic masculinity being how a male is supposed to be rather than how they actually are, I think we should take it a bit further and actually talk about what exactly are the effects of toxic masculinity. We should be talking about how toxic masculinity affects the men and women of today's society, and how destructive these end results could be.
Okay, so when we look into effects of people subjected to toxic masculinity, it's a very wide range of problems that they face. So the main thing, the first point I'm going to tell about it is men generally don't show out their emotions, or they just suppress their emotions. When people in general suppress emotions, they don't let it out. So after a very after maybe it's like a month or so, they do get depressed, and that often leads to a lot of irrational decisions that they take. It can also be fatal. So what my advice to people would be is, don't close yourself up to the world. Please do share your emotions if you feel you are being traumatized, or you feel mentally disturbed about certain events. So the next point is, people who are affected by this toxic masculinity, they generally think that being violent is encouraged. So toxic masculinity teaches that violence is the best way for men to prove their strength, and also discourages them from releasing their feelings in other ways. So this is often the main reason to why a lot of problems have arisen from men. They just suppress their feelings, and as I had mentioned before, it just they do take irrational decisions and so on. And also people who go through these who are subjected to toxic masculinity, they are discouraged from seeking help. According to the American Psychological Association, men are less likely than women to seek help regarding their mental health, which may likely be due to the ideals of masculinity. So people generally don't take help, especially the male gender. So it's really bad that they get cooped up. Their feelings are just cooped up, and they don't let people know, and so on. So and there are these are the major points discussed when we look into the effects of people who are going through these trauma. So this, the other end of this problem, it might also be fatal. So yeah, that's about
Yeah.
it.
So obviously, as you had mentioned, that toxic masculinity dictates that that the only emotion that men can express is anger. This actually hinders men from getting in touch with other things that they are feeling inside themselves. Now, eventually, the end result of this is that this can distance men from other people and keep them from developing close relationships with their partners and kids. Now, this, when you look at it prospectively, this is a very fatal thing. This actually hinders men from actually relationship with their partners and kids. And obviously, the other one of the effects which you had already mentioned is, I think, toxic masculinity teaches that violence is the best way for men to prove their strength and power. Now, obviously, this is something which in itself is very destructive, not just to themselves, but to society in general. Wherein if men think that violence is the only answer and it is the only way that they can express their strength and power, then that in itself is a very bad thing. And I think that being a male myself is just that it discourages them from actually releasing their feelings in other ways, and this leads to very dramatic and really bad effects of this. Now obviously, going into majorly the effect of what happens because of this is that we see a lot of increase in rape culture and homophobia, wherein men think that the only way for them to assert dominance is through sexual assault and harassment. Now, this obviously leads to a lot of bad stuff in society, and rape culture is definitely something that has been fueled by toxic masculinity and the stigma that surrounds it. Now, obviously, we also need to address the issue of LGBT, wherein homophobia in itself is that it's just that masculinity has always been like constructed in contrast with feminism, right? So masculinity is what has been stigmatized is that masculinity is the contrast of feminism. So what would happen is that whenever a man does something that's considered a woman's role, he is automatically considered less of a man. For example, if you take the case of homophobia, man likes dating another man, which is supposed to be in society's view a woman's role, what would happen is that he is automatically considered as less of a man. Now, this serves not only to shame men, but to shame men who aren't gay, but also to dehumanize gay men, which I think is a really bad thing. And I think that we as a society today should overcome the stigma, should overcome the homophobia, should overcome rape culture, and we should better ourselves and get rid of toxic masculinity and the dramatic effects that it puts forth. And I think that obviously we've discussed a lot about the effects of toxic masculinity and stuff like that. Now, I think we should like kind of look into who are the people who exactly exhibit traits of toxic masculinity. Now, obviously, we've seen that men are more than capable of doing that. So the question that comes to my mind is that do women also exhibit traits of toxic masculinity?
Yes, some women can certainly enforce toxic masculinity in harmful gender roles. So, for example, think it is widely seen that thinking a man should always pay for everything and should be the sole provider in a relationship. Using the phrase "man up" and similar type of phrases is also considered as enforcing it, or being judgmental when her boyfriend slash male partner expresses emotions because inside quotes men don't cry and men are not supposed to show emotions or men don't cry. So such a uh, very character has been seen not only from the male from also the female side, and such characteristics are actually generally influenced by the society, and also sometimes it's biologically influenced. So now we've seen about the effects of toxic masculinity. What is toxic masculinity? So now we're just going to go out for prevention and the cure. So what do you think? How do you think one should overcome such insecurities and feel that their true feelings are valid?
I think that to start the discussion of overcoming such insecurities and actually combating toxic masculinity is I think the first thing which is like the go-to bread and butter trait that we should all look out for is speak out. It's not just for the women but also especially the men. Speak out. Don't let this toxicity spread. This is just social conditioning. It is not just the way that men are supposed to be. We need to get out of this kind of thinking. We are not born misogynist. We are not born homophobic. We are socialized from a young age as to what a man should be and shouldn't be, and taught to reject the other part of our duty as we get older. So, what I'm suggesting is that as we get older, we should unpick these ideas from our mind and these ideas that have been passed down to us by our families and our peer groups, and start to question the idea of what exactly we are as being a man. Now, obviously, we had talked about how dangerous it is to still be spreading toxicity. Toxicity, I mean the stigmatized views that have been passed down to us by our families. And I think that the more you pass on your generosity, actively care for people, and look outside yourself, the more anti-toxic that you will end up being. By showing due to one guy, you're not just exemplifying what can be done, you're spreading the word. And if you don't think society works like this, then society is doomed, honestly. So I think that to combat toxic masculinity, we should actually, be more generous, actively care for people, look outside ourselves, and most importantly, speak out.
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah, I think these are some of the things that we can obviously use to combat toxic masculinity. And I would love to hear your input on how exactly we should combat this.
Uh, this is a very important and a major problem which has not been addressed, or maybe it has been addressed for a few years or so. So the first thing I would like to tell is awareness is a very important part, because we don't people generally don't know about things like this. So we have to tell them it's okay to be it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel emotional, it's okay to be someone who is not violent enough. So bringing awareness to the society is the most important part we should look into. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, sure. So now that we've discussed a lot about toxic masculinity in itself and what are its effects, and we've also discussed how exactly overcome it, a question that is from our audience is, what are some traits or actions which could be considered as a form of toxic masculinity? Now, this question, as we've previously discussed, is that a lot of things in today's society which we view to be as normal is actually toxic in itself, in nature. Like, for example, when people say wrong and men are supposed to be, what's the word, men don't cry and stuff like that, this is actually detrimental and this actually dehumanizes them. Like, how exactly can you call it masculinity if you're not even showing your own emotions? Okay, like if you're not standing up for what your true feelings are, and if you're just going along with the crowd, and you're just saying like, okay, yeah, men shouldn't cry, I shouldn't be expressing my emotions, we have seen that it can have rigorous side effects. We have, like, for example, we've already talked about this when it comes of the case of homophobia, right? Like, people think that it's the work of a feminine entity to actually date a man, whereas if a man dates a man, he's considered less of a man. Now, obviously, these are very detrimental and very backward views, which I think we should all expel. And it is in the interest of society, and it's the best interest of society that we actually move forward progressively and think as a society on what exactly it is that should be defined as a man, and not just listen to what we have been taught so, and we have been, peer pressured and socialized into as children. Yeah.
So, okay, there's another question also. How do you think toxic masculinity has had an effect on the current Indian society? Also, how it has affected women's safety. So, yes, toxic masculinity does certainly have the effect on current Indian societies. As usual, it's known to. So, people who are generally just closing up, not showing their emotions, it doesn't just happen in any foreign countries. It also happens in India. So, this has to be given a very big part in answering. So it has been affecting women's safety, as uh, I had been stating before that men think that being violent is good. Being violent is the solution for every problem. So and they have to be dominant enough. So that's what toxic masculinity is all about. So it has been affecting the women's safety a lot, because they feel that maybe harassing a woman may bring back the dominance to them, or maybe they'll feel more manly than they ever be. So yes, it has been affecting women, and it also has an effect on the current Indian society.
Yes, of course. And that was a wonderful answer. And I think one of the next question talks about how toxic masculinity actually affects women, and, showing that women are weak and stuff like that. I think that it goes back to how, like from a young age, calling boys as girls is an insult. Okay, we have perpetuated this, that calling boys as girls is an insult. Now, if you just take a step back and look at this objectively, you'll see that the idea that being like a girl is a negative trait. This is what toxic masculinity teaches us. Because if you're calling a boy a girl and that is considered as an insult, you'll see that states that being a girl itself is a negative trait. Okay, which most definitely is not the case. Okay, so now there's also this another phrase that goes around that says men are in charge, right? Which means that women are not. Like, these are all very like backward and detrimental views, which I think we should all expel. And I think that it's part of the patriarchal society that has been built around, and it has obviously been for like centuries and centuries. And obviously it has affected women more so than men, and obviously it has affected men as well. But I think in the case of like, as you had already mentioned, Rishika, that men think that the only way for them to assert their dominance and for them to feel masculine is that through sexual harassment and violence, and repressing their feelings and anger. And I think this in itself causes a lot of problem in today's society, where women are subjugated to violence, domestic violence, and there's a lot of rise in rape and stuff like that. And I think that women should take charge. Not just the women, the men and women, we ourselves as a society should take charge in actually expelling the stigmas around this, so that we as a society, as a human race, can move forward and be more progressive.
Okay, so another question posed is, what do you think? Okay, what do you think about the whole concept of men having to be physically strong? and are expected to protect women and children. It inside quotes also assuming that women are weak.
I
Okay,
think
the
that question answers itself, right?
yes.
We'll go ahead and answer that.
Okay, fine. So when we say about it is not necessary that men are the only people supposed to be strong. They're supposed to work out and just take care and protect women and children. It's not like that. Anyone can do the deed of uh, taking care, protecting, and giving them care and nourishment also. You know, people in military are, they're not only men, they're also women over there. So we are looking at a situation where both men and women are physically strong and more than just capable of saving a nation. So why do we look into just a family, when we look into our own society as a family, I feel that a lot of crimes which has been happening will be stopped too. So uh, assuming that woman is weak, you're not supposed to assume such a thing, because no woman is weak. We are just generally mentally strong, but it's high time that even we take up a few weights and start bodybuilding and so on, so that such a toxic masculine thought that men have to lead things have not are not supposed to just go out and so on. Okay. There's another question. Is showing gentlemanly behavior and courtesy toxic masculinity? Definitely not. It's not a very toxic courtesy in toxic masculinity. No, it's just you being. It's just showing gentleman. It's just being showing kindness to people. Mean, it's just being yourself. I don't feel like it's very tough. It's showing toxic masculinity. And so if you want to be kind to someone, if you want to be gentle and care, you will be a gentle person, right? So it's not wrong showing gentlemanliness to people. Okay. Okay, so society that is us we consider. Okay, as Sujan has posted, the society that is us we consider toxic masculinity is something big and not a day-to-day issue. But in reality, even the smallest things and comments past is also toxic masculinity. For instance, calling out men wearing makeup, men who paint their nails and this. Okay, fine. Um, the solution to all the above stated problems is awareness. We have to create an awareness among our society that it's okay painting and it's okay for men to paint their nails. It's okay if they are applying makeup. In fact, I've seen a lot of male people who are really good in make applying makeup and being makeup artists also. So again, awareness is a major key to the problem that's stated above.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry for the technical issues. Okay, and so I think, yeah, as you had already mentioned, wearing makeup and stuff like that. These are just some views that have been stigmatized, obviously, by society in general. And I think that it is in our best interest to, give freedom of expression to both men and women out there, and redefine what being a man actually means. It can actually be anything you want. That's basically what I'm trying to say. And anything else you would like to?
Any other questions? Okay, so Talha,
Yes. Go
there's
ahead.
a question I would want you to answer. So, is showing gentlemanly behavior and courtesy toxic masculinity?
Um, to actually make a case for toxic masculinity, right, we just need to look at the current trend, which is the word simp that has been going around, right? So now, what sim basically means is someone who is kind and gentle and caring towards women, right? Now, the connotation that it carries, the word simp in itself, it means that you are, no, that that you're not being man enough, right? So if you take a step back and you actually look at it objectively, you can see that the word simp is so toxic that it actually means that we should be degrading women and we should not be respecting them. I mean, like, do you see how messed up that is, right? So what I'm trying to say is that yeah, being a gentleman and giving respect to women is one of the most important traits of an actual man, and I think it is something that we should all be following. Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Okay, and I think we have another question wherein it states that during wars and public disasters, women and children are given first preference to means of rescue. Is this an example of toxic masculinity? Okay. I think one distinction that we should have probably made is that biologically, man and women are different, right? When I say different, I mean just biologically, no way intellectually, right? So I think it's just that, well, there's no easy way to answer this. It's just that I think men are expected to survive better than women. Like, I don't know if it's that true. It's just something in personal thought. Okay, I don't even know if that's true to what extent, but I just think that it's that men are, in, like, if you take the example of coal mines, you would see that most of the people working there are men. That doesn't necessarily mean women are incapable. It's just that men are, it's just the norm now. Okay, it's just the way that we have been taught for centuries that men are supposed to do this kind of stuff, and I think this also falls into this category wherein it's like men have a better survival rate or something. Like, it's just a personal thought. I don't even know how far that's true.
Yes. So I would not consider that as a toxic masculine thing because men are due to the popular belief that men are supposed to work hard, men are supposed to be, working out and stuff. They are generally not given a lot of preferences because, and children, they are not capable, or maybe they are, but not to an extent of a male, that they are not able to, they will not be able to protect themselves actually. So women or children are given the preference because women are strong, but they're not as strong as men at certain conditions, especially during the war and public disaster, where people attacking you are more stronger than anything, and people and men, I mean, the women and the children are not strong enough to take care. So it's not an example of toxic masculinity.
Okay, yeah, and I think that in itself is a very good note to end on. I think to just give a guys a slight recap, we define what toxic masculinity is. It's the views that have been put down on us, and it is something that has been forced down upon us. One, what actually is the definition of a man, and I think that needs a rework. Right, we should actually take a deeper look at what actually is the definition of masculinity and how being toxic, toxic masculinity, and how it has affected us. And I think that today's society would do best if we you know expel these stigmas and we actually thought about it objectively and give freedom of speech and freedom of expression to both men and women, and actually encourage more men to be more expressive of their feelings rather than repressing it. And I think it's the best interest of all of us as a society and humanity as a race in itself that we would it would serve our best interest to actually expel the stigmas and move forward as a society. And the men should express their feelings, speak out, and not to be as violent. And the women obviously should also be a bit more what shall we call
Considerate.
non-toxic. Yeah, more considerate. And yeah, I think that's about it. And anything else you like that?
Yeah, that's it. A request
Okay.
to all of us is again sharing awareness about the topic so people come to know about what toxic masculinity actually is and how do they prevent themselves or how do they speak out in such a situation.
Yes, I think that's also an important thing. And thank you guys for watching. We hope you found it informative. Please do follow, like, and share Crescent Literary Society, and do follow Let's Talk Social for more content like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.